Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Necromancer's Grimoire. This series will focus on world building, lore, and various characters for one of my current book projects. The Necromancer's Grimoire follows Theo, a 15-year-old magic user. They use Zthul, or death energy, to cast magic, making them a necromancer. In order to get into one of the 4 magical secondary schools, they must fill out a grimoire. The actual book will be accounts of different types of magic, magic users, and general world exploration, with some snarky comments from Theo in the margins. For this first video, I wanted to explore the aesthetics of the world a little bit. This story takes place in a modern magical city. Basically, the Industrial Revolution happened in this world, so a lot of the basic building structures are very industrial and solid. Magic users said, forget that, we want our whimsy back, and the result are city streets with basic building blocks, then whimsy added on top. Some newer buildings have gone back to the full whimsy of the past, but for the larger cities, like the one Theo lives in, the base structures are solid, boring bits now with added whimsy. These sketches are some basic ideas of what I'm thinking of. They're probably not going to be final things that I put into the book, but I just wanted to test out some different aesthetics before I moved on. The first full illustration I did was to put Theo into this modern setting. In this case, a subway car with other magical users/creatures. Now, I picked a subway because, well, I take public transport to get to and from work, and taking the light rail every day, I was really inspired because I think that you see so many different people on the subway, and there's just so much life depending on, like seeing posters, seeing advertisements, seeing different types of graffiti happening on the walls. It tells you a lot about a city when you're riding public transport like this, so I thought that this felt nice. Struggling with, straight lines, as you do. So I just wound up copy and pasting them just so I could have them on the interior, and so it actually goes back to that 1-point perspective. Technically speaking, this starts getting into 2, but splitting hairs on that one. One thing that I need to get better about, especially in my full illustrations, is just where my brain decides to lock in. For some reason, while I was drawing this, I just got so hyper-focused on putting in all of these details into the buildings, which I am glad that I did because it helps kind of show that combination of whimsy and industrial that I'm going for in the first sketches that we went through, but I had originally intended the windows to be fully blurred out, but then I spent several hours just brick detailing, adding in windows, testing out different roof shapes, adding in more whimsy as I went, that eventually I just decided to keep it solid because, my goodness. One of the things I really love in these kind of environment illustrations is filling in with details. So you'll see all of these different kind of flashes of different graffiti styles. I'm kind of doing a mix of magic symbols, of names, of mythical creatures. So, there's like a frog wearing a crown, there's like a dragon. And for the magical symbols, I am pulling from symbols I've already drawn for the magic system. That's going to be its whole other episode, but that one, it kind of overwhelmed me a bit, so that one might take a little while, but I really just love having that kind of life set into everything. Now, for the color palette, I knew since the majority of my buildings are going to be in those kind of red tones, blues, and purples to have that magical, mystical feeling to it, but then the red tones as the brick, I wanted to keep the interior of the subway car warm as well. That way I could use cooler tones and green tones to help bring your eye to the focal point. These poor... So, okay, I might flash them on screen. I designed advertisements for these different elements of the subway, and I spent so long making them, and you can barely see them in the final, which is just a K-Ward art special. I'm gonna do that every single day of my life. But you can buy them on my TeePublic if you like them. Yeah, you can't even see them. It's wild that I spent so much time. Anyway, more graffiti. Most of it, I'm just doing random symbols. I'm just doing kind of like similar to the graffiti that I've seen around my area and that kind of thing. Now we got our characters in. I'll be real, Theo is my main character. I designed them. I struggled so much to get them to feel right in this space. Eventually, like you saw, I had to cut out my original sketch that I did on sketch paper and just plop it in, because for some reason, I just could not get them to look right. But, like I said, I wanted the eye to be drawn to Theo because they are the focal point, and because their palette are those green tones and darker tones, having that complementary contrast between the warm tones of like the reds and the oranges automatically draws your eye to them. And then this little creature that I'm drawing now is technically a werewolf. I say technically because werewolves work a little bit differently in my world. We are going to get into that, hopefully, in a later episode, but basically, they can transform whenever they want. It's not just the full moon. The full moon just helps with that. I loved this cat. This cat was my favorite thing to draw. He was so round. Don't get attached to this wizard. He is not going to stay, because again, I don't know what it was about the characters on the right side of this composition. I just was not happy with them. And he's gone. So, I noticed that while I was drawing in that wizard that a lot of my characters had very similar body types, very similar heights, and so I wanted something that filled in the space a little bit more, so I wound up making this little druid person. We're gonna go into the druids and what they are in this world, hopefully in their own episode, but basically their magic type makes them look like they are made out of plants, and they kind of are. And I knew that I didn't want Theo to be like a sore thumb sticking out in the scene, so you'll notice that on this druid I'm going for more like pale yellows instead of like harsh warm tones. Number one, so they actually look like they're made out of plants, but also to help break up that Theo is not the only character or element in the scene that has tones that are different than the warm red tones that you're seeing in the rest of the characters, in the rest of the interior, and even the exterior. I struggled with finding modern style of clothing. That's something that you're going to see me practice a lot in these videos, because I usually draw for medieval periods. So trying to find modern outfits that still felt like that wizards would wear them, I have my own Pinterest board all about it now, so there are so many different options. My headcanon for this guy is that he's a potions apprentice. He's going to open up the shop and he's just like bitter of, I want to be reading a book. I love messing around with the different types of lighting layers. They just add so much life to it, and I love using them. I probably overuse them, but look at the light! And the flashing, oh god, it's the flashing. Look at them go! Got a little glow on the subway specter. I could tell that everything was feeling a little bit too bright. There wasn't a lot of shadow shapes, so I pushed that a little bit more. I also added in some cooler tones, you saw that in some of the lighting, just to help balance it out. I felt like the worms were overtaking a little bit too much. And I decided to add a little rat friend, because I thought it was cute. But yeah, that's the final illustration and final sketches. I appreciate your patience for this first episode. I kind of got overwhelmed, started overthinking how I wanted to start this series, but this is more of what I want this series to be. I want it to be sketches, maybe throw in some full illustrations as I see fit. I want to bring you along and show you what I'm thinking for this next new project. So, hopefully you enjoyed. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.